Hi, and welcome to the Modern Persian Food podcast. We are food bloggers,
Bita Arabian
and Bita Nazem Kelley, and we're here to share with you the rich flavors and fresh ingredients of Persian cooking and how to incorporate them into today's modern lifestyles.
We're excited to introduce you to the flavors, tastes, and techniques we use, and also our own cultural stories and perspectives growing up in the U.S. in a Persian family. Thank you for joining us.
Hello and welcome to episode number 86. I am with Bita, and we are excited to be talking about Persian kababs today. You may have been confused looking at a menu at your favorite Persian restaurant about all the different types of kababs listed, or maybe wondering what makes Persian kababs different from other types of kababs from other countries. So we thought this would be a great opportunity to deep dive into all the different types of delicious, savory kababs and what makes them so special. I'm here with the lovely Bita Jun, as always. Hi there, Bita.
Hi. For those of you that are maybe new to our podcast, we're two Bitas with a common passion for Persian food.
Yes, absolutely. Persian kababs can come in a variety of different meats, and we will get into that in just a second. But maybe we start off with what our favorites are. Bita, what's your favorite type of kebab?
That sounds good. You know, in preparation for today's topic, I don't normally eat during our episodes except for when we did one with Mikey and Rin. We had some snacks that we shared, but I have food all around me today because just imagining kebab and thinking about it and planning for it, my mouth already starts salivating. It is so delicious and different. I love every single kind of Persian kebab, but if I had to choose, unfortunately, I have a bit of some digestive issues. So what my mouth wants to eat isn't always what my stomach and intestines will handle.
Sure.
So what I would choose would be the chicken kebab joojeh or a fish or salmon kebab. How about you? Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with you that the joojeh kebab is like one of my all-time favorites. And the joojeh kebab is like marinated with like saffron and lime juice. And it is just so delicious. My favorite is the joojeh bo ostukhun. So you typically like a Cornish game hen, which are cooked on skewers over an open flame. And the thing about the joojeh kebab is that it has such a delicious aroma while it's cooking as well. Once you smell that, it's hard to like actually get anything else to satisfy eating it. So if I had to pick one, I will pick joojeh kebab. It could be served on the bone, joojeh bo ostukhun, or it could be boneless. Sometimes they have boneless thighs, sometimes boneless breast. It's marinated in saffron and onions and lime juice. Some people actually marinate theirs with yogurt and some people don't. There's kind of like a little bit of a debate going on about like, do they have the yogurt in the marinade or not? But again, it's skewered and cooked over the flame. Joojeh kebab actually could come in a couple different forms. So it's not just skewered in pieces, but it also can come in koobideh form.
Although that I mostly order the white meats, I am obsessed with the smell and the flavor of the red meats as well. And to me, I use the koobideh ground meat kebab as well as the barg, which is more of like the filet or steak version of kebab, as a pillar as to whether it's a really good restaurant or not. Like my husband and I, Bobby and I, we judge whether this is a quality restaurant or takeout place based on how good their koobideh and their barg is. If their koobideh and barg is bad, it's just like, it must be like bad quality or it's not prepared right, then we don't love that restaurant. So yeah, I definitely have at least a bite or two and a taste of it. But yeah, let's talk about what it is. What is koobideh?
So kabab koobideh is made with ground meat. And so we were just talking about the chicken version, which is, I feel like, a newer version. I feel like growing up, we didn't necessarily see chicken koobideh as often. But so you can make it with chicken. But I think the most popular kabab in general is the kabab koobideh, which is with ground meat and grated onions and Persian spices. You basically have to handle the meat a bunch when you're making koobideh, and you mix all of it, and it's placed on the skewer. So you have ground meat, and there's like a beautiful technique of grabbing the meat around the skewer and using your fingers to actually mold the meat to the skewer and leaving a little space at both ends of it so that it can be suspended over the fire and having the flame just like kiss the meat and produce like a beautiful char. It's typically beef, but there is chicken. And I think we've recently learned that there's some restaurants who are now making their koobideh with impossible meat. So that's kind of a fun little twist for people who want to be a little bit more plant-based, to have like a different option to have koobideh.
Very modern. Yeah, when I talk about koobideh, I can't help but think about memory when our kids were young. Mm-hmm. I didn't grow up speaking a lot of Farsi. And my husband and I, even though we're both Iranian, did not do the best job of raising our kids to speak Farsi. They have limited knowledge. They took some classes, some cute little classes when they were little. They know some words. Of course, we have extended family around, but we didn't speak Farsi with each other, and we didn't speak Farsi with our kids. Mm-hmm. They know some words, of course, and they understand a lot of things. But yes, koobideh is a favorite. And when they were little, they called it Kooby Bear.
Kooby Bear?
Yeah, Kooby Bear.
Cute. That's fun. When we actually have the kabab, the way that we eat it is typically over rice. And why I think that's a good transition to that is actually we typically in Farsi will call it chole kabab, which is like rice with kabab. But my kids call it kabab polo.
Oh.
So that's like their cute way of saying chole kabab. So kabab polo.
I mean, that's pretty good that they know those words.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, it's typically served over rice. You can have these skewers served with bread as well. And there's typically fresh herbs and also charred tomatoes alongside of it.
Yeah, and onion, sometimes like a raw onion. It tastes really good that way. And it has onion. That's primarily, I think, the flavor note in koobideh. It's traditionally a really fatty ground meat with a bunch of raw onion in it.
Mm-hmm. Grated in. And yeah, that's a great point about the onion. We actually talk a lot about that in our onion episode. So if anyone wants to learn a little bit more about the role of onion in not only kabab, but in Persian cooking, that is episode number 4, one of our very first episodes. So if you want to scroll back and listen to that, it's a lot of fun and, breaking down onion and talking about it as a whole.
One of the most loving things you can do for someone is to create a little loving bite or loghmeh.
Loghmeh,
All the yummy favorite things that you want to put in your mouth, you create for someone. You put the bite of koobideh in there. Maybe you put some sabzi, khordan. Maybe you put a little sliver of onion and tomato. You make this perfect little bite, but then you give it to someone.
That's so cute. Aw. Absolutely. So that was just a little bit about koobideh, but let's talk about some other types of kabab. So next, let's talk about kabab barg, which is typically filet mignon cut in a way that it's flat and wide, and those are skewered. And what can you tell us about kabab barg?
It's freaking delicious.
Yeah, for sure.
It's so good. When you order it in a restaurant, you can just either order it by itself, or many restaurants offer a sultani, which is like a very royal way of ordering. You get typically a skewer of the filet version of the kabab.
The bag,
and a skewer of the koobideh.
Yeah.
And that way you have all of the deliciousness of kabab on your plate. You're not missing out and you don't have to choose.
Yeah, definitely. The sultani is ready for every sultan, every king or master that there is. The sultani is definitely very delicious. But the special thing about the barg is that the way that they get it super flat is, the way that they cut it thin, but they also use the back of the knife, the flat side of a knife, and pound on the piece of kabab itself and actually tenderize it a little bit more and also make it flat. And that also makes it look a little bit like a leaf. And that is actually where the term barg comes from. Barg means leaf.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
My mind is blown. I did not know this. Seriously?
Yeah. Kabab barg is leaves of the kabab.
I did not know this.
Yes, it's suspended over a flame and it doesn't actually touch the grates itself. It's wide and it's super delicious, and that is lightly marinated and just gets that beautiful char from the grill. And that's the kabab barg. And you had a special barg recently too, a little bit different. I hadn't heard of it until you told me about it.
I did. Yeah. I shared it on the IG down in Southern California. We tried a new restaurant and I couldn't believe that they had chicken bag because I hadn't seen that before in the Bay Area. I had not seen that on any menu, but it was huge. So they must have flattened it and made it more tenderized. It had the same flavors as other forms of joojeh kebab that I have come to know and love, but it just looked different. It resembled the sort of wide and flat kebab bag, but it was chicken.
Well, that's fun. That's great because, you know, some people, like, as you mentioned, like may not be able to have a lot of red meat. So that's kind of fun to have that same type of texture, but having it with a meat that they actually can eat a little bit more comfortably.
Yeah. And I mean, feelings wise, maybe you feel like a little bit fancy. I mean, I think that bag is usually the most expensive thing on the menu because it's the filet.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Yeah, so those are some of our favorites. Let's talk about chengeh. You know, chengeh is the type of kebab that I actually haven't had a lot of, but I know what it is. And typically lamb, but it could also be made with beef. And it's actually pieces of the meat skewered. So it's like little chunks of meat as opposed to having it koobideh or flattened like a barg. And it's cooked the same way over on the grill. And it's a super delicious, kind of like a little bit more of like a humble type of kebab.
I love it when the meat is lamb cooked that way. It's so flavorful and juicy and tender that whenever I see that, I have to be in the mood, but I will order it.
Yeah. Talking about lamb, man.
Yeah.
I think actually this is like one of my favorites. I should have probably mentioned this at the beginning, but the shishleek, which is skewers of lamb chops. Again, with a beautiful marinade of actual herbs and saffron and lime juice. And then it's skewered. So you probably get like 4 or 5 chops of the lamb with a skewer. And again, with that char on it, it is such a delicious and beautiful dish.
Me too. This is the mouth-watering portion.
Oh my God, I love it so much.
Drool. Can you see the drool dripping down my face right now?
Our listeners can't see that, but I'm sure everyone can envision you salivating. Those are just some of the types of kebabs that, you know, are a little bit more specific. But basically what you could do is really just put any kind of meat on a skewer and cook it in that method. Like, for example, salmon or shrimp. Those are also really great options that typically they have like a little bit of a saffron marinade with seasoning and then again cooked on those skewers. And the Persian skewers are not like round. They're more flat and wide skewers. They hover over the heat source so that it doesn't stick. And if you're ever trying to attempt to make these kebabs at home, if you make the koobideh, a lot of people will actually complain that their kebab will fall. So some quick tips on that to make sure that you're turning the kebab often. And sometimes when you're actually getting the sikh is actually the name of the skewer, but when you're putting the kebab on the sikh, make sure you kind of tighten the ends of it, like press the ends of it to make it as like flat as you can. And make sure that you like knead the meat enough so that the onions and the meat and the spices, everything is really well incorporated. There's actually a term for that. It's called like changbizani, gushto changbizani. So you really like kind of mash it together and it makes it kind of like a more putty type of consistency that helps adhere to the sikh, to the skewer itself. So it's a little bit of like kind of trial and error and then just not losing confidence as you're making it. It could be a little bit difficult. And that's why I personally typically have kebab in the restaurant. I don't necessarily make it always at home, but I do really enjoy going to a Persian restaurant and having kebab.
Yeah. And don't be afraid if you're vegetarian or vegan to join your friends at a Persian restaurant because 9 times out of 10, they're going to have vegetables available, charbroiled vegetables on a skewer on the menu.
Yeah, that's a great point. They actually have like a term for it, gyahi, just vegetable skewer, and that'll typically have like bell peppers and mushrooms and onions. And not to forget that one of like the main vegetables when you're having kebab is the beautiful tomato. Skewers of just tomatoes, and you get like kind of that dark char on it, which makes the inside like a little bit soft, and it's really delicious, and it's a really great complement to the beautiful flavors of the kebab with the rice.
Yeah, it's typically a Roma tomato, the sort of longer oval-shaped ones. And it makes me happy that our whole family, my girls, love the tomato. I'm not sure that they did when they were really little because it usually is charred to almost like a black and burnt looking thing. The skin usually is like almost burnt, which if you don't love that, you can take that part off.
Yeah, easily it comes off.
It complements each bite.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes people may associate the shish kebab as like a Persian type of a kebab. You won't always find this at a Persian restaurant, but it's basically alternating meat with vegetables and kind of having it type of skewer that has your meat and your vegetables all in one. Again, it's not like super popular in Persian restaurants, but that is another type of kebab. A lot of times that when people are making kebab, when they take it off of the grill, they put it on bread.
Oh, yeah. Zira kebab.
Yes, yes. The bread underneath the kebab, nuna zira kebab, is like a very, very special thing. It absorbs all of the oils and marinades from the kebabs and the juices. And it's like one of my favorite things. Although it's not very healthy, but if you can get your hands on a little bit of nuna zira kebab, you'll definitely not regret that.
Oh my gosh, yes. Very coveted. Mm-hmm. If you could imagine like a white lavash that has all the yummy meat juices and spices and flavors soaked into it, and it gets kind of like soft where you could just kind of like scrape it off with a fork.
Yeah.
It doesn't sound aesthetically pleasing, but it's so good.
It's super delicious.
It might be right up there with tahdig. Mm-hmm. I would go as far to say. So today's Ask the Beats comes from your hubby.
Yeah, actually, my husband, Paul, as we were getting ready for this episode, he had a question about kebab. And so we figured we'd feature that on air. And what he's asking is, what is the difference between a kebab and a burger? So,
yeah, that's actually a really good question.
Yeah, you want to go ahead and answer it?
I mean, you would think like, hey, they're both ground meat, ground beef. Why aren't they the same? It's not just the shape. Mm-hmm. As we covered, the kebab has a lot of grated onion in it. It's mashed or clawed at.
Yeah, changed.
For a long time. And then it's shaped into the long ovals. And it's cooked differently on the grill. You want to touch on how it's cooked differently?
Yeah, so it's going to take the shape of the skewer itself when you're making it like on the grill that way. And then the shape of a burger is obviously round. The Persian type of kebab, you do need to knead the meat a bunch, but like in a regular standard burger, you actually don't want to knead the meat too much. It kind of makes it a little bit more tough and dense. So one big difference aside from the shape is like how much you knead the meat. That's a big difference. And then, yeah, absolutely, like how you eat kebab versus a burger. You know, it's funny, they both taste delicious with tomato, but really when you are eating a burger, it's all contained into one big item. And then you're picking it up with your hands and you're just kind of taking one big juicy bite out of it. Where you're having kebab, you're typically having a spoon and a fork. You know, when we eat Persian food, we use a spoon in our right hand and a fork in our left hand, and we kind of push the food onto the spoon. So typically when you're having chada kebab, you're going to have it that way, and you typically have it with rice. Chada again means rice, so rice and kebab. And some of the seasonings are a little bit different, but both are super delicious, and I love both of them.
Yeah, fun fact, I actually, when I'm going to eat a hamburger, I love it with onion and tomato. Mm-hmm. Guess that's the Persianness of me.
Yeah.
Well, this was so fun talking about all the different kinds of Persian kebabs that we've come to know and love, and kind of demystifying it, hopefully, for some of you that may haven't tried it. We hope we've encouraged you to try some in a restaurant. Summer's coming up.
Yeah, as we kick off the summer, and hopefully you can try grilling some yourself or visit your favorite Persian restaurant and try a variety of the different kebabs.
Awesome. Thanks, Pizza June.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to the Modern Persian Food Podcast with Bita and Bita. Thanks for spending time with us. If you've enjoyed what you heard today, consider telling a friend or giving us a good rating. You can subscribe to our show for free on your favorite podcasting app, or find us online at modernpersianfood.com or on Instagram for the recipes and information we talked about today. We'd love to hear your thoughts, and see you next time.